Oh, I didn't turn my camera on. Great start to the show. All right, now the camera should be working. Sorry about that. Welcome everyone to another weekly Low Brass U Live, and I promise I'll keep the camera on. I think the audio should be working pretty well. Had one little scare there at the beginning, and make sure to add Connor on here, assuming all of that works, and all of it does seem to work. Connor is alive and well. And we might be able to all notice that he's rocking some new merch.
Ah, you got shirts. We have a shirt.
Yeah, so this
Really
is
just one.
This is our only example. I ordered like maybe 7 or 8 different things, and unfortunately only one thing has arrived so far. But it is this long sleeve T-shirt for Connor. So mine should be here later this month. It seemed odd that there was such a big difference because they came from the same place. Maybe they had some issue with stocking the T-shirt. But yeah, the shirts are live and well, and we also have a new feature that I'm going to test out here. Hopefully it's working, where we can have text from questions pop up on screen. So let's see if that is working. So we'll get Equipment Manager's howdy on the screen. And look at that.
Yeah. Does it work?
It seemed to work.
Sick.
So yeah, so it seems like everything is a go. So these shirts, I'll pin the T-shirt link here in a second. I should have had that up, but I didn't because I'm incompetent. But let's see here. We got our first like kind of actual question here, and I'll throw it on screen because we have that technology.
Throw it on the screen.
Well, I'm also debating either the John Packer 232 bass trombone or the Jupiter XO 1240 on a budget. I personally haven't played either of those horns, I don't think. I might have played the John Packer before, but just on gut feeling, because it's the XO line, which is their kind of professional tier. That's probably what I would go with. I'm going to Google it here.
Yeah, I think I've actually played both of those horns. I'm not a good person to ask about this because I know people that are dealers of both of those types of instruments.
Right.
So I'll be as unbiased as I can. But yeah, both of them are great. Had a lot of, or I don't know if specifically which XO I played on. I played on one of our mutual friends from Chicago's for a little orchestra thing, and it was lots of fun. Slap the low and grin.
It looks like looks like the regular 1240 is, it looks like it can be either rotor or Thayer. I guess it's not specified by the dual independent rotor or Thayer is what just the basic 1240 is. So, if they're the same price, I would probably go with the Thayer, especially for bass trombone. That's generally what I would recommend. But it looks like that's breaking the budget, or breaking the duster. It's kind of breaking the...
In the duster.
Yeah, I assume that's supposed to be budget.
Could be duster.
Everything is 500 more. Yeah, I think I would probably still lean towards the Jupiter personally, but yeah, I don't have a strong opinion with either of those because I've not played either of them. But yeah,
you could do a lot worse than either of those horns.
Right. They're probably going to both serve you pretty well. But awesome. Well, I'm glad everything seems to be working here. I'm going to try to get that the link for the T-shirts, and I will...
It'd be fun to ask while you're doing that.
Yeah.
I kind of want to ask Airsoft Mickey, what do you plan on doing with this bass trombone? Are you going to be in like a jazz band, or is this for school, or for an orchestra at school, or anything like that? It's kind of fun to hear what it will be used for.
Definitely a good idea to know kind of what you're using it for too. That definitely helps. So I've got the link here, and I will pin this. I think I can pin... I have to replace the previous pin. Well, I will do it. And I'll put out that I think this is working. I didn't test it out, but I put a coupon code for people who want to buy the shirts first for until the end of the month. Coupon code low brass U, all one word. I'll throw that in there also. So if you want to be like Mr. Eisenmenger over here with his shirt. And one thing that's a little bit annoying is that on the website, the render of the T-shirt doesn't look quite as it looks like the L's cut off. But Connor, maybe if you want to get really really close, you can show that L is perfectly fine, and it's as high quality of a
L is
print
there
as we'd hope for. So
L is good.
Yeah,
the sizes fit really really good. I feel like I'm very like prototypically medium, and this is just like a perfect fit on this one. So I would say, you know, with the size, I haven't washed it yet, so I don't know like if the size will change when I do that. I'll probably hang it up when I dry it. This is first time just to see how the cotton behaves, but so far it's a really really good fit.
Yeah, and it's at least that one, and I kind of assume all of them are the T-shirts are actually made by Gildan, so I think that those T-shirts specifically are pretty good. I have a few of them already in my just like general T-shirts from various things, so they're used quite a bit. You might have one if you're curious to see if you know the fit might be good or not. You probably have a T-shirt that is made by Gildan. Which I assume is all of them, although right now this is our only sample. If I had a sample, I would also be wearing it. But there's some other things on there. There's I ordered a coffee cup, a water bottle. I got an accessories pouch, and I also got a cell phone case. I'll probably get rid of the cell phone case unless people actually want that. I needed a cell phone case, so I decided that was a good way to get one. So I bought a cell phone case, but I didn't even think to put one for Apple or for iPhone. So yeah, I could do that if people actually want it. But yeah, so the website is live, and you should be able to, you know, if the website's broken or something, let me know. It's kind of not, you know, it's hosted somewhere else, so it shouldn't have any issues, at least that I can think of. So, but awesome. Well, one topic that I want to get into that someone commented on a stream about, and that's what kind of gear we're using for live streaming. So we won't make this a super technical. You know, I won't run you through everything because it's kind of obnoxious. You know, all the little ins and outs. But I'll kind of address just the microphones that you're hearing, because I think people have some concerns of that. So I'm using a Sennheiser shotgun mic. And they have a couple models. I didn't spring for the most expensive one, just because they can get a little bit up there. But let's see. I think I have the MKE 600 shotgun mic, and so that's what you hear me speaking through. And essentially, a shotgun mic just has a bunch of slits in it that kind of rejects everything from the side. So that kind of helps. It kind of just focuses in on whatever it's pointing at. It's designed to be off screen. So a shotgun mic is the same sort of microphone that you would use in movies when you see someone with a boom pole. That's that sort of design of those microphones. Is they're trying to only catch what's on the screen, or sorry, what's on, you know, what they're pointing it at. What microphone are you using, Connor?
This whole thing right here is my workhorse and my pride and joy. It's the AT2020 Audio Technica. It is I don't know much about mics. I don't claim to be a gear person. It's not the straight to USB type. This is the type that has the XLR cable that goes into little box, which I can show you. It's a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 little audio interface there. And that I've used for literally like everything in the world. And I will say this about this microphone. It's equitable, it's cost effective, it's pretty reasonable. I have sent in countless tapes to premier bands and various things like that. And while I have never received a compliment on my playing, I always get compliments on the quality of the recording. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, well, we all know that's probably not true. We're not completely factual, but yeah. So I'll show just behind me because it's easy enough for me to do. I'll have to kick Connor off the screen for a second, but you can see. Oh, wrong direction. Right there. Oh, it's hard to do. So that's the trombone mic that I use most of the time, which is an Audio Technica as well. It's a ribbon mic. AT4080 is the model number of that. So that's what I use for most trombone stuff. And then I've got some tuba mics that are above and a pain to take down. So I'm not going to do that. But they do exist. So, but one of our questions from Mystery Jeffrey is when
I want to say one more audio thing really
Okay.
quick before we get on to that. I know Mystery Jeffrey's got a lot to say today, but if you want a crash course in mixing, like EQ and compression and reverb and stuff like that, and all the tricky, confusing things to make trombone sound really, really good when you're recording it, this is not a sponsored drop or anything, but the way that I learned it was, other than trial and error, was Mike Lake has really, really good videos on YouTube where he goes through and explains his rig, and he has screenshots of all of the plugins that he uses, which are all really, really fancy. But you can pretty much do everything that he does on those videos for mixing his alto trombone, and use like free stuff that you could get on GarageBand, and you'll get a comparable, similar product. That's a great way to get started.
Throw the link into that video. I've seen that video numerous times. I love
So good.
I love those recordings. Mike Lake.
Afternoon in Paris.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. On the alto trombone.
So good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like his playing a lot. Yeah, that, to be fair, he's using I think a $5,000 mic. He's using a Neumann tube mic. I have nothing that is even scratching that price tier. But yeah, I mean the reality of it is the most important thing with recording is the technique, not necessarily the microphone. Obviously, having a good microphone helps, but using the right type of microphone and using a microphone in the right way that it was designed to use. I mean, a lot of my earlier Instagram videos were all recorded on my phone with cell phone audio, but what I made sure of is that it wasn't so close because you can't control the gain, and so I made sure that it was far enough behind. And you'll notice that, especially the trombone videos, almost all of them are with me facing perpendicular to the camera, so that my bell is not directly into the phone, but reflecting off of something, then getting to the phone. So, honestly, a lot of it is really more about just kind of doing the right thing with your recording, not necessarily the gear that you use. You can make a $5,000 microphone sound bad if you don't know what you're doing with it. But yes, I'll throw Mystery Jeffrey's comment back on here. When are the Conor face pillows hitting the shelves? Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have the face pillows. I will say the website that I'm using, the company that's doing all of the t-shirt stuff, they do have pillows. So it's not outside of the realm of possibilities. I'm not really sure what printing a face would entail, but I believe it is at least technically possible. So maybe Mystery Jeffrey wants to start his own line of just Conor's face on pillows. But
Yes, some non-canon merch.
yes. Awesome. So yeah, that the audio stuff. I'll probably do a video at some point of my complete audio setup. It's just the problem is it's always changing, and I feel like the moment I do a video is the moment where it's like, oh, that's not what I'm using now. It's always changing. I'm always trying new things. I've got a handful of different microphones, and they all sound different depending on how I use them. They all have multiple settings, so it just gets to be complicated enough. But yeah, so hopefully that kind of covers sort of our live stream setup. Camera wise, I'm using a Canon C100 for my main camera here, and then Conor's setup is going through the internet to me and then back out on the internet, so it's not exactly the most premium setup possible, but we're kind of doing the best we can with the technology that we can at least figure out. But yeah, Conor's going through Discord to get to me, which I'll shamelessly plug the Low Brass U Discord that you should definitely join. That the link is up there earlier. It's been, it's still new, but we've got, about 35 people in here, and we got some good questions in there. And I'm generally always, I have it on my phone, and it, everything will show up there. So I'm generally pretty active on it, probably more active than I need to be, but alas. Awesome. Yeah, and feel free if anybody has any questions about anything. And now we have, especially with our new feature of putting the questions on stream, we've got some new technology, so you'll get to see your name and everything.
Wonderful thing.
We won't put every single comment on screen, unfortunately.
There's a slight vetting process.
Right.
Not much. Just enough.
Right. Just enough to keep things at least a little bit serious.
Right.
But awesome. So Connor, do you want to mention anything about your euphonium, or should we keep that a little bit? I don't know where you're at with that story enough to share or not.
Let's wait a little bit to share stories about the new euphonium, but I will say that I do have a loaner YEP 321 right now to practice on, which has been great.
I guess I didn't know that the loaner was also a 321.
Yeah, they're both 321s. I had no idea. I just randomly brought it up with a band director in the area that my partner was a student of, who I now read brass quintets with and play tunes with at the local park outside, sometimes on Sundays and Saturdays. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking to buy a euphonium. And he was like, what are you looking for? I was like, 321? Like, oh yeah, cool. I'll bring one next time. Like, man, insane. He's got a huge program that's just got, so much stuff going on there. They're wonderful people. So I'm renting it through the proper channels, of course. It's not like just a lone horn, but it's fun. So I've got that. And we have officially, I think all of my lead sheets are formatted right now, which is fantastic. So now I need to assemble a group to lay down these incredibly difficult charts. I mean, we have one chart already essentially recorded.
Maybe you could, I know what you're talking about, but maybe you can explain to everyone else what exactly you're talking about, what this performance or recording is for. Might be interesting to some people.
Oh, right. We probably haven't said that yet on the stream, have we?
No, I don't think that has been mentioned.
Yeah, I don't know if it's officially announced on their website or not, but I've seen other people announcing stuff, and you got 11 people here. You heard it first here. I'll be doing a recital at this year's International Tuba Euphonium Conference, which is not officially called the iTech this year. It is VTech, because it will be virtual. And the cool thing about VTech being virtual this year is that it's free to everybody. It's totally open to the public.
Actually, didn't know that.
Yep, first time ever. I think it's absolutely outstanding. They're doing that. I think it should always be like that in some capacity. I think going forward, it'd be really cool to see an equitable virtual version of conferences in the music field. I think that's a lot of fun. We have the technology. Let's do it. So that'll be great. I'm hoping that I can turn it into a PD experience where I can include my students in some way so they can, see the inner workings of how music can be made and presented in an academic setting. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So what I'm doing is I'm just premiering works that I have written in my time at home, which during this time of introspection of doing writing stuff, I've found that I'm gravitated towards small group stuff with a rhythm section, and I'm gravitating more towards non-functional harmony and non-traditional forms. So it's going to be nice and spooky. It's going to sound very analogous to all the fun modern euphonium concerti that's out there. It's nice and spooky and quasi-tonal. So I think I'll fit right in, hopefully.
Yeah, there you go.
We shall see.
Maybe another thing that you could talk about just a little bit is your kind of experience with the euphonium and how that all kind of came together and how you've been playing it, because it's not a new thing to you, but it's kind of one of those things where it was never quite your main thing, but it's kind of become maybe not your main thing, but an important part of Connor Eisenmenger, the musician.
Yeah, it's definitely become a huge part of my identity as a musician, probably from 2019 onward, where it was always something that I knew I played it and I always knew I enjoyed it, but there was never really the channels for me to study euphonium. There definitely weren't the channels for me to own a euphonium, and it wasn't in the cards. So my relationship with pistons goes back to fifth grade band. I started on saxophone, but then I switched to trumpet because there were way too many of those. And then I was bad at trumpet, so I switched to trombone. But I always, when I learned the trombone, I learned it as it related to the kind of compression valve combination series, not because my band director made us. It was just kind of like I noticed it. So,
Yeah, and
these are kind of the same.
You were probably just more or less translating from what you had learned on trumpet.
Yeah, I was learning trombone the way that I knew the easiest way to do it. And so I always have kind of had a relationship with that. We had to march euphoniums in marching band in high school, so I did that, and then I played in tuba youth ensemble in college and auditioned for wind ensemble at my undergraduate place of study and was told I was not allowed to do that.
For logistical reasons or because of your playing?
We won't get into the details of that. We'll let the readers decide for themselves. But yeah, so then I totally put it away, and then I got hip to the iTech jazz competition because of none other than our fearless leader, Zach. And so auditioned and went through, and that worked out, and ended up winning it that year, only because Zach wasn't competing. And then ever since then, it's just kind of like, wow,
also,
like now I have a reason.
Only because other people had already won it too. You know, Aaron Eckert.
Yeah,
who's no longer
there's so many good jazz euphonium players. There you go. Yeah, it was just right place at the right time.
Right.
I kind of established like now I can play euphonium, like I have a reason to. So it's like, oh, I got to do it. So I'm trying to find every avenue to like get back into it.
Yeah. So let's try to get through some of these questions that have kind of stacked up in the last little bit. So Mr. Anonymous says, oh, that was not the one. That's not the first one, but we're going to do that anyway. Have you ever been, or that was the first one, sorry. Have you ever been burned out of playing your respective instruments? You know, there definitely have been some waves of, you know, having those sorts of feelings. For me, it's kind of always kind of worked out that I would maybe, you know, I was a little bit tired of dealing with certain things with the tuba, and then I did more trombone stuff and vice versa. Probably the most I ever got burned out was in high school playing tuba, when all I was really doing, you know, was playing tuba in wind ensemble. And as many of you may know who play tuba in wind ensembles, not always does the tuba have the melody or an interesting part or even play. So there were some times where you know, I was not really thrilled with that, and it was a long, you know, hour and a half in band every day of sitting there and either counting rests or playing whole notes or something, and I got really sick of that. And that's actually when I started playing trombone, which then got me really excited about that. And it kind of, you know, they kind of ping pong back and forth, and now I would say they're pretty much equals. But it's been an interesting ride. How about you, Connor?
Have you ever been burned out of playing your respective instrument? I don't know. I go in seasons with all of my instruments just because that's kind of like how my brain works, because I kind of go through seasons of being really, really hyper focused and passionate about things, and that extends outside of music. And so I've only learned very recently to let myself ride those waves and trust that I will come back to whatever it is that I'm doing at that time. Like I kind of go through cycles of like, I'm really into jazz improvisation, and then I can't stand practicing improvisation. I got to go practice excerpts, and I get so bored of that, and I got to go play valve trombone, and then I get bored of all of it, and I go garden outside, and then you know, it all kind of comes through seasons. But I think one phrase that has kind of dictated like my practicing for the past like year and a half, 2 years, is I want to have a healthy relationship with the trombone, or I should say I want to have a healthy relationship with my music practice. And
Right.
so trying to do things that are forwarding that first, and then whatever exterior goals I have must align with that sort of central norm that I have for myself.
Right.
You know, boundaries, playing for fun, allowing myself to be creative, giving myself space, giving myself grace when I mess things up. You know, that's kind of like what I try to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it, you know, especially when you're talking about playing excerpts too much or playing, you know, improvisation things too much. That's definitely how I operate, where it's one thing kind of, you know, to me, I can't just do one thing. if I do one thing for too long, it'll get just so stale, so old. It doesn't matter how cool it is. It doesn't matter how fun it is. I always talk about it, in these sorts of regards of, it's like eating cake. I really like cake. Cake is good. It tastes good. I like eating it. I don't think I'd want to eat cake for every single meal, every single day. I think that it would get old, and I think I would, it wouldn't be good. The variety is what's really nice in things. So a lot of my practicing is very, kind of variety driven. But we'll get to this next comment. Do you like DCI? That's a good question. I guess I'll go first. I think it's interesting, and I think that it's something that's kind of fun to binge watch on YouTube, but I never did it. So, I just seem to always have other things that I was into at the time that made it where that wasn't quite possible. What about you, Connor?
Should I have a direct current interrupter?
Yes, definitely talking about direct current interrupters.
Yeah. No, DCI. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's great. I think it's a fun way to introduce a lot of people to music all at once. They have good reach. They get students interested in music. Net positive. I never did it. I don't know why. I just wasn't really like. It was definitely the culture in Kentucky. There was a big marching band thing out there, but I was just doing other stuff over the summer. I don't know what I was doing. I was picking my nose and playing in the sand. I don't know.
I wasn't super exposed to it in high school and in college. I took courses almost every summer in between my, between doing 2 degrees for my undergrad. I didn't really have time. The only summer that I didn't take courses was when I was playing in the Disney band. Of including in between my undergrad and master's, I had to take classes then too. So to get my degree done, or my 2 degrees done in 4 years, I had to go to school almost year round. So let's see. Owen has a question. How long should I be practicing since I play 30 minutes a day? I assume you mean something along the lines of, in band class you have it for 30 minutes a day or something like that. I think there are lots of ways to kind of dissect that. Not everyone needs to be practicing 8 hours every single day. Probably no one needs to be practicing 8 hours every day.
The last time you played regularly 8 hours a day, Zach?
Undergrad, probably.
Yep.
There wasn't really another choice, unfortunately.
That's specific to the school you were at, not necessarily the degree program you were in.
Correct, and also the fact that I was doing 2 degrees. Because I remember there would be days where I would go from, like, orchestra rehearsal, that was like 3 hours or 2 hours, and then I'd go to big band rehearsal, that was an hour. I'd have big band sectionals, and then I'd have trombone choir for an hour, then tuba euphonium ensemble for an hour, and it's like, oh, also you have a lesson tomorrow, and you need to learn this stuff if you haven't already, or you need to polish it. So it got to be a lot, certainly. There's not necessarily a right or wrong amount. I would just say that, if you want to, you might think about trying to get more. It depends on what you want to get out of it. Playing a brass instrument can be a fun hobby. It can potentially pay the bills. It could be, your scholarly work. It can be a lot of different things, and it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. And if you're really trying to progress as a player, I would definitely recommend playing, a little bit more than a half hour a day. The way that I look at it, for better or for worse, there's always someone else who is practicing. So there's definitely a good reason to get some hours in. Let's see here. Mystery Jeffrey says, what were your earliest, most influential musical moments or experiences?
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
Got one.
Let's hear it. I'll let you go first.
Let me tell you. I'll let you have some think time while I say mine. So I'll say that I didn't come from a musical family in the sense that they were like band directors or even like musically literate people, but we were music advocates and we were listeners. And my dad, he played clarinet in high school, and from what I've heard, he was quite good, but he didn't like play or read music at all. All we had was like an electric keyboard at home, and he would do things like, he didn't know he was transcribing. He didn't know that word, but he would transcribe Bach, and he would transcribe like Chicago, or he loved Jesus Christ Superstar, the musical. He was a big fan of that score, so he would play songs from that. I remember the earliest thing that we did that I thought was cool, because like piano was like, it was like magic. It was like, how are you pressing the buttons to make it go? I didn't understand like the tonal relationship. And so we would drive in the car and we would listen to, I remember specifically listening to the Beatles with my dad. I don't remember what song it was, but he was like, we were listening to the track. It was on a CD. And he's like, all right, listen to this, like that note that they start the song on. Listen for that very, very first note. And we listened to it a couple of times. And then he turned off the car and he took me to the piano and we turned on the keyboard and he said, find the note. And so we tried them all out and we sang the word with the one that I guessed. And we were like, that wasn't right. Was that higher or was it lower? And we're like, maybe it was higher. And then I try another one. It's like, all right, we're getting closer. I don't remember I remember coming to the conclusion that we had found it. And he seemed to agree. But that was probably something that really sparked my first curiosities into music. There you go. That's my cool story.
I hadn't heard that story. Yeah, I guess, it's hard for me because I was, learning music at a very, very young age. I started studying piano when I was 4. So it's like, it's hard for me to kind of remember like a first sort of thing. But one kind of early memory that, this isn't necessarily me playing, but it's somewhat similar. I remember when I don't even know how old I would have been. I'm sure my parents could tell me, but very, very young. I remember helping my dad, who was like the music minister at our church. He was, setting up his keyboard, and I would like carry his keyboard stand. And I always remember that because I remember thinking that the keyboard stand, like there was nothing that could possibly be heavier than just like the standard X tier keyboard stand. Like I just thought that was there's nothing in the history of the world that has ever been heavier than that. So I clearly wasn't very old, or I was very weak, which I think very, very old, or wasn't very old is probably the more likely of the two.
Could be both.
Could be both. But yeah, so I remember doing that and helping my dad. He had like a blue and white cable for the left and right. I remember exactly which way it went on his PV keyboard. And I remember doing that. So I guess I just remember like helping my dad with things. Those are kind of my earliest memories. Hope that counts. That seems like it should count. But
yeah, that counts.
But yeah,
it's on the board.
We'll see. Do we have any other questions in here? I haven't been following the chat. We've got Elvis is saying
That's
hello.
A good.
I think Elvis has risen to the level of being a regular. I think this is like 3 or 4 weeks in a row for Elvis. So,
It's your boy Elvis in the house.
Elvis is crushing it. So, and for Elvis's fearless return, we will also plug that he's got those mouthpiece holders from his uncle. Look as good as they did last week. They still look good. So.
Nice.
And we'll also thank Connor, as I'm seeing the delay of the stream, for not peeking his microphone and silently cheering that Elvis has.
A silent hooray for Elvis's arrival.
Right.
Should be a good tune.
Yeah. Definitely like just some bass trombone chaos right at the beginning.
Yeah, absolute shred.
But I'll put on, this isn't a question, but it's a comment. From Owen saying, I wish I could try a valved trombone. Valved trombones are definitely interesting. I think you know this, Connor, but there's a potential that you don't, or maybe you've forgotten at least. But I actually bought a valved trombone when I was in 5th grade, I think, either 4th or 5th grade. Do you know this story?
I didn't. No, let's hear it.
So, where I went to school, you kind of had, most people started band in 6th grade, but there was kind of this option to like get out of the class, and then the middle school band director would come to the elementary school. And so for 4th and 5th grade, I did, we like went through essential elements and, would play through things with like 6 of us basically. And I played this like not so great quality euphonium or baritone that my parents bought for me on eBay. And then I was wanting to get into trombone land even at that age, but I wasn't quite sure, what I wanted to do. So I bought a valve trombone on eBay for probably all of like $200. I saved up my allowance money. because that's the way I did things. I would always just like save my allowance money and my Christmas money, and I'd buy like very, very cheap musical instruments. Like I technically own multiple guitars that were at my parents' house still. All of these things I still have technically. They're definitely collecting dust. But yeah, so I bought a valve trombone then, and I remember I tried to bring it into band class, and the band teacher was not thrilled with it. So he was like, "You can bring it in today, but that's it." So I never really used it. It wasn't really made well. Like the valves don't really work, and the mouthpiece doesn't fit like any standard mouthpiece.
Oh,
Like it doesn't fit a small shank, a large shank, or even a Remington shank trombone mouthpiece. So
then what does it fit?
exactly, it fits the mouthpiece.
Does it come with a mouthpiece?
It does come with a mouthpiece.
Okay.
and it's really small.
That's just
yeah. So it fits.
that's
that
big
mouthpiece.
brain
There you go.
instrument manufacturing.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to keep them buying from the same eBay seller, I guess.
Sure.
But let's see. So, EHAP. I'm sorry if that's not how you pronounce your username. But EHAP says, "Do you think Jimbao instruments would be fine just for multi-tracks?" Yeah, I think they'd be fine for many things. My my euphonium is made in the Jimbao factory in China, and it served me really well. I did a couple of things to it. I put different springs in it. I have like Miraphone springs that a friend of mine gave me, and I had to replace like the felts and things. Other things, all of those things go bad anyway, so I kind of replaced a few things. But yeah, those horns, there maybe are some that vary in how well they're put together. But for the most part, I've had a lot of students with those instruments, and I think the biggest thing is making sure you take care of them well, which is really true of all brass instruments, especially new brass instruments. I borrowed an instrument actually last week that's made in that factory, and everything worked pretty well, but I could tell that the valves, they're rotor valves, and they were a little bit clanky. And I asked the person that I borrowed, it's like, "Hey, how well do you know how to oil a rotor valve?" And they're like, "Oh, I know how." And it's like, "Tell me how you did it, because I did it, and it was I was able to get rid of that rattle." So, I think that's a big part of it, is just making sure that you take care of them well, especially, really any new instrument, because they can get so dry, and there really can be so many problems with just that. If you get metal on metal, it's just a bad time. And I think especially with a lot of those instruments that are rotor, I think people think that you don't need to oil rotor valves as much as piston valves, or as often, and I disagree. I think you need to be using them just as often, and realistically, all valves you should oil at least once a day. I know that that's not the news that a lot of people
Wow.
say, people do, but realistically, you should be doing it at the beginning of the day and when you're putting it away for the day, because the oils are also they're cleaning agents. So anything that you put on there, that oil is going to essentially flush it out and kind of get rid of it. So making sure that you're doing a really good job of oiling any brand new instrument is really, really important. And I would just kind of, I tell all my students that, especially when you first get it, you need to be oiling it every day, even if you don't play it, like just every single day. Don't let that thing go dry. Do you have any experience with some of those Jimbao instruments? I think you do from borrowing a bass trombone, maybe.
Yeah, I've borrowed I've borrowed a bass trombone of the Jinbao ilk, and as well as I've played on your euphonium before. Totally fine. Not just, they'd be good for multi-tracks. They'd be good for playing. It's fine.
Yeah, my euphonium, I've had it since the summer of 2015, so 5.5 years now, and everything still works pretty well on it. I would say that I baby it. I oil it like crazy. I try to make sure that it's really, really clean and everything. And realistically, you should be doing that to all the instruments that you play, regardless of their manufacturing. But that's what I would say. I never play it without oiling the valves. But speaking of that instrument being, is it good enough for just multi-tracks? With my Jimbao made euphonium, I was pretty successful in multiple competitions. In the Rich Madison Jazz competition, that's what I played and placed second in that competition. And the International Women's Brass competition, I co-won the euphonium category with that euphonium. And, so I think that they can really be fine horns. I think mechanically is where people start to have problems. And I try not to play the blame game, but I often blame my students who don't oil them enough. So making sure that you oil things, on my desk at any given point in time, I always have oil nearby. It's probably a sign of my desk also being a little bit cluttered. But it's like if I need to oil this euphonium, Monster Oil Faster, that's what I use. I literally have a bottle just sitting right next to my computer keyboard for when I grab it, and that's I make sure that I'm really taking care of it. So, and I take care of all the instruments well. I've got a lot of oil, or a lot of valves to oil, a lot of slides to make sure are greased well. And that's really, really important to me, and kind of as like a little bit of a school of hard knocks with a lot of my students. If they come in and their tuba's really noisy, or their trombone slide, I can tell that it's not freely moving. We'll take some time and make sure that everything is going to kind of be a-okay. So I will take time out of a lesson to make sure an instrument is working well. And I've even had to shame Connor before for his rotor valve on his Yamaha.
You would not be happy with the condition of that rotor right now. We should do like a live resuscitation of that valve.
Hey, we can do it now.
All right, let's take one step back. I'm not emotionally ready to do that today. Someday soon, though. I need to give that valve some TLC.
Do you even have the necessary oils?
I have some oils.
Some oils. Do you have bearing and linkage oil?
Yes, I do have bearing and linkage oils, and I put it on all my bearings and linkages. Thank you very much.
Very good. That's the one that people forget.
I will say.
Go ahead.
I will say we're talking about the Yamaha valve specifically. That one's probably in better shape right now than my Thayer valve on the Bach 42. Because I've been keeping the Yamaha relatively happy just because I want it to be in decent, like on the sale floor shape.
Right.
So I have been doing some regular checking on that one. The Edwards, though, I haven't been doing quite as much of my vining routines as I probably should.
And you're not talking about the application vine. You're talking about the David vining, right?
I'm talking about the David vining routines for trombone. I love those. They're so much fun. They're great. But I was playing my bighorn in the park this past Saturday and had to do a little bit of like emergency first aid on it right before I left to go play tunes outside. But it ended up being fine. It ended up working all right. But the Yamaha is fine. I don't know if it's a simpler rotor. I know that mechanically it's different in some way.
Thayer,
maybe it's more.
You're saying, or
is it more complicated or less complicated?
I would say that the rotor is less complicated, but maybe that's more of a factor of it just being an older design that we've kind of all gotten used to. Essentially they both are rotary valves. Yours is just more of a conventional rotor. Also Elvis, who's actually more of a skilled, instrument repair person than I am, says you need three. You need light bearing and linkage, you need light rotor, and you need ball joint. And so actually I might be doing it not perfectly right because I tend to use the bearing and linkage oil on the ball joints as well. I guess a question for Elvis, we'll put that on the screen. Is the ball joint oil or grease that you recommend, is that even more viscous than bearing and linkage oil? So I guess that's probably a good question for Elvis, who has a little bit more
good question. There's a lot more than we do. I will say, now that I've said all that we have, the Yamaha trombone, if you want it, let me know. I'm selling it.
Yeah, so shameless plug. Connor is selling.
I will shameless plug.
Yeah. Is selling his Yamaha Zeno. Is it the 8820? Is that what it is?
Yes. Yes. 8820. Or maybe it's an O for open. I'm not really sure.
Oh
what
yeah, I think it is.
that final
I think it is
digit
an
is.
O. If we all just always
there you have
struck
it.
through the zeros, we would never have to guess as to if zeros are O's or vice versa.
That's right.
I try to do that. I'm not a cross through the Z.
Just fun.
I don't like crossing through the Z though, just because it's my name and I don't like crossing out the Z.
Who's gonna do that?
I mean, you do that to differentiate from twos.
That makes sense. What about 7? Do you like to cross through the 7?
No, I don't do that.
I love to cross through the 7.
Yeah, I just don't do that. Let's see.
Fine.
So, using Owen says he uses Hetman's linkage oil. Yeah, I used to have some Hetman's linkage oil. The only Hetman's thing, and I think this is almost gone, that I have is this piston oil. I've pretty much switched to Monster oil. This stuff's worked out pretty well for me. I use mostly their heavy rotor oil. For some of my newer horns, I use the light rotor oil, and then I use their bearing and linkage oil. And then one of my favorite things, I can't remember what I did with it. Is it on my desk? You can see how organized I am. It is on my desk. Is this what they call the trumpet slide oil? So for my tuba players out there, or actually it works well too for euphoniums if you have a trigger on your euphonium. I like putting this trumpet slide oil on my valves that I want to move just with gravity or potentially spring actuated depending on what the setup is. And I always make sure that I've got this really well lubed up on like my first valve slide on my my tubas. That works out really well. Owen says the Hetman's kept his rotors fresh for 2 whole months. And what I would say kind of in counter to that is...
I would say congratulations.
Yes,
that's great.
Connor might say congratulations. What I might tell you, and you can do with this information what you choose, I think about oiling a brass instrument just like I do, getting my oil changed in my car. If any of you drive, if you get you don't wait until your car has a problem to get your oil changed. Pretty much no one does that. And if you do go all the way with, waiting till there's a problem, you've probably done like irreparable damage to your engine and might even need a new one. So what I would say with brass instruments is it should be, although for most people it's not, but it should be similar, meaning that when I oil my valves, I don't oil because there's a problem. I oil so that there never is a problem. And I definitely go through more oil because of it. And that's something that you just have to kind of get over. But the way I look at it is if I oil it a lot and the instrument can last for a long time, then I don't have to buy a new instrument when this one goes bad. Brass instruments aren't necessarily, a forever thing, but they can be at least a lifetime thing if they're treated well. But they do get somewhere. So Owen, I would just tell you that make sure that you're oiling it before there's a problem. And again, I try to tell my students at least weekly. I'd hope for them to do it more often, but I would say at least weekly, even if you don't think that there's necessarily a problem. But there's lots of different brands. I've switched pretty much exclusively to Monster oil, but I've messed around with the Burt Bio oil a little bit, and I really liked that when I was trying that out. And then Hetman's is probably the most used by most professionals, I would say. I'd say that's a pretty common thing. And then trombone slides, that can vary a ton.
Oh yeah.
Like what are you using these days, Connor? Are you still using the Yamaha?
Yeah, Yamaha every day.
Yeah, so the
Yamaha, Nuvo packaging.
Right. I like the new packaging, although it seems, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it seems to get slightly clogged sometimes on me.
I have not had that experience. That being said, I cannot confirm this, but I think that I am having a better experience with my Yamaha stuff in a more consistently colder or at least a more consistently temperate climate. Because I know when my Yamaha stuff got hot, I think that it had a tendency to separate.
Yeah, and I always make sure to shake it. And I know people, because our friend Abdullah keeps his in the fridge. Is that correct? Or
he keeps that
used
thing.
to? So yeah,
Keeps that thing on him.
right. Well, it keeps it in the fridge. That's different than it's not on
He's in the
him
fridge.
actually.
Sure.
It's actually the
All right.
opposite. But yeah, I've actually stopped using the Yamaha quite as often. I still occasionally use it, hence why it's on my desk. But I mostly am using the trombone stuff from Burp. Let's see if I think I think it's in my case right now. I only have one container of it, which is not ideal. But yeah, we'll put another thing that Elvis said because maybe we should have him as a guest sometimes. But Elvis says that bearing and linkage is too thin and won't keep the ball joint lubricated for long. And that's probably, I mean, well, one, I trust Elvis, so I know that it's true, not just I think it's true. But I guess what makes it work out for me and why I don't necessarily notice that as much is I oil my valves so often that probably just doesn't get to the point where it's worn out. But that is a good overall point that a thicker, more viscous oil will last longer. And the way that I kind of think about it is you want to use the thickest thing that you can get away with. Obviously, if you use something that's too thick, it won't move around well depending on what application. You don't want to put like that ball joint stuff on your piston valves. They probably won't move very well. So the thickest oil that you can kind of get away with is kind of what will last the longest. So like with my rotor valves, for my older valves, I always use the heavy, and for my I know it's kind of blown out, you can't really see that, but for my newer valves, I always use the lighter rotor oil from Monster. And there's kind of a transition period that's sort of happening with like my tuba from 1999. It's transitioning into the old oil land, so it needs to get that heavier oil because they just get worn down overall. Let's see, we should say some hellos to Zach, who's definitely a regular.
What's up, Zach?
And then Elvis also says, let me put his last comment. Ball joint will also help your trigger help keep it a little bit quieter. So it's definitely good information. So at the end of the day, I always trust the people who work on instruments for their job. I think that those are people who tend to know what they're talking about. I would say that I'm not a repair technician, but I'm definitely a little bit more careful and cautious about what I'm putting on my instruments than I feel like a lot of my colleagues might be. I think there's a lot of people who end up damaging an instrument and it doesn't last as long because it's not as well oiled. You basically, I think about it as you never want metal on metal. You always want an oil or some lubricant in there to help prevent a metal on metal, because metal on metal is just going to wear, whether it's a slide or a valve or what have you, and it's just not gonna work out as well. Owen says he has the whole arsenal of Hetmans in his case. That's definitely a good idea to have a whole bunch of things. The problem that I have with keeping it in my case is that I have too many cases for all my instruments, and if I do it that way, I never seem to have what I need. So I've got like a lot of things on my desk, the kind of regular things, and then I've got like some other oils too that I use.
Yes.
Yeah. So
keep other things in my case.
Right. Yeah, I need to go through my case. It's starting to get a little bit heavier than it needs to be. I tend to put maybe a few too many things in there these days. It's gotten to be heavy.
These days, I'm not taking my case out much. I'm not playing much where I am. But what I did, one of the most important things I kept in my case was a bag of peanuts, because you never know if you're going to be stuck out somewhere, and then maybe food was allegedly provided and then it's not. Or maybe you get stuck in between gigs and you looked at the itinerary and didn't realize how long you were going to be stuck, in between, or you're commuting from gig A to gig B. It's good to have the nuts in there. And then I used to always keep extra batteries for my little stand light thingy until the very, very first time that I played with the 1 o'clock at UNT, I couldn't make a sound come out of my horn. I couldn't figure out why. And you probably already know where I'm going with this. But I think it was a AAA or maybe it was a AA. Something got stuck in my lead pipe.
I think AAA is probably the right size to get locked in there.
Yeah, I don't know why the batteries were in with my slide, or I don't know how it got there. I just remember not being able to blow, and I had to run to the repair shop and just like hold up my slide and go like, "Ah!" And they just like, "Ah!" And then we fixed it. Sorry, I screamed into the microphone. I know.
It's okay.
But,
You're forgiven.
yeah, so don't be like me. Don't shove a battery in your trombone.
One thing I did want to go back to that I forgot to is Ehab saying I wasted 2 bottles of blue juice in 1 month. What I will say is blue juice is really thin and definitely not my preferred oil for basically anything, and tends to just not work super well. So not to shame blue juice, but might try something else that might help your situation a little bit. But yeah, having extra batteries in your case is something I should probably start doing, because there's definitely been many occasions where I've had like a wireless microphone die, and that's not always ideal, which I don't think is necessarily my fault, but it's not always viewed as such.
But the powers that be, even if it's not your fault, they can't always save you. And if you have the power to very easily save yourself and just make the night go smoother for everyone, and
there's always,
it doesn't matter whose fault the problem was.
Right. And what I do in those sort of situations is I make sure to take the batteries out of my ear pack, because the ear pack is, I don't want to call it optional because I don't believe it to be optional, but it's maybe less important than the microphone.
I would say it's absolutely less important than the microphone. Most important part about the ear pack is protecting your ears with good in-ears.
Yes. But so I'll address the shirt. I've gotten enough questions about the shirt, so I guess I will.
Yeah, it's time to.
I will address the shirt. So where did I get this shirt? To be honest, I don't know. But it is made by, wrong side, mirror image. Polo Ralph Lauren, where I used to get a lot of my clothes, especially since they do big and tall pretty well. And I've had this shirt for so long. I probably had this shirt for longer than a decade, so I can almost guarantee they don't make it exactly like this anymore. Because this is the reason why I'm wearing this shirt now, is because, my weight has gone up and down, so that this did not fit me for a while because it was too small, and now it fits again because it's not too large like some of my other clothes. So that's that. So I doubt you could get this exact shirt, but you might be able to check from Ralph Lauren to see if there's something that they might have that's similar. But yeah, I used to get them at like the outlet malls. So there's that information for you.
There you go. You were almost exclusively a Ralph Lauren individual when I first met you.
Right, and a lot of that's just because of, I tend to purchase tall sizes of clothing, which is
good shirts.
Pretty difficult to find a shirt that is, extra large tall or 2 extra large tall, because I am 6'6", and even if you get a bigger shirt, a lot of times it's just bigger going out and not necessarily longer. I'm sure everyone wants to know about how clothing sizes work for tall people. So now you know. Which actually, I don't think it's all of the shirts, but I believe that the Low Brass U shirt that is, I think it's the T-shirt. It's one of them. I know it's one of them that has a tall size as an option, but I can't remember which one it is. So there's that. If you need a tall size, you might be able to do it. So we got Jose in here. How's it going? Wearing it because it's comfy. Yeah, I mean, it's a good shirt. I don't know. It's definitely a worn shirt at this point. I think it was a slightly more vibrant color at one point in time in its life. But
it's a nice muted sort of forest green now. I think it's a good color.
Right, there we go. It works out.
I have a question for you, Zach.
Yes, I potentially have an answer.
This is or maybe a discussion point, maybe something that might be fun to talk about today. I just got done talking about this with Mary Galimi over at Dennis Wick yesterday. And since it is the day where we wear green, and there's the topic that we talked about was luck as it relates to music. And so kind of how I defined luck when we were talking about it in that conversation was like any positive outcome that or musical product that you cannot replicate, and the advantages and disadvantages of relying on that type of playing in various settings of music. Maybe if you want to share your thoughts on that type of stuff. Immediately what I thought of course, was like, in my mind, I think to or the academic setting where you might have a learning target or a goal of a specific performance level. And, we all have good days and bad days, and relying on inconsistencies in our practice versus trying to figure out and getting into the nuts and bolts of things. Maybe you can expand on that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely always luck involved. Anyone who thinks that there's no luck involved, there's the adage of we make our own luck. But that's just unfortunately not always how it can go. Sorry, I'm responding to one comment. I guess I can also just say it instead of typing it. But Jose, if you want to check out the T-shirts, you can check the linked thing that's pinned it should be at the top. It's at the top of my page, but maybe my page is different. Which is funny. I was also checking on that shirt, and I am the ultimate fool because I did not order a tall size, even though I got a shirt that had a tall size option, because I just didn't look at the drop-down menu well enough. So, but alas, that's okay. But yeah, as far as luck goes, I think that it's, luck is maybe not the way that I always describe it, but, being in the right place at the right time, I think that that's a big part of it. And I think when you address it as being in the right place at the right time, you can kind of make it a little bit more so of, you can maybe not totally make it work for you, but you can maybe nudge it in the right direction, making sure that you're around the right places in hopefully the right times.
Right.
So that's kind of how I always, because luck is so vague and it's hard, if it is luck, then it's just like, well, what are we doing? We're just hoping that things work out. So yeah, that I try to think about it as being in the right place at the right time, because especially thinking about it from a freelance perspective of trying to get a gig, that's a question that comes up all the time is, how do you get a gig? I want to get gigs. How do I go about getting gigs? And I think about it as a multiple tier thing, as you have to be good, or, you should be good. That really helps. So, be good at playing your instrument, be fun to be around. But also people have to know that you're fun to be around and, good at your instrument. So that's kind of the sort of thing that I think about when it kind of comes to luck, is that I'm trying to think about putting myself in situations that I will be lucky, if that makes sense. So, thinking about when I moved to Chicago, I hadn't started, I was there over the summer. I hadn't started my master's, because Northwestern starts late because they're on the quarter system. So it starts like September 20th or something. So I was there with essentially nothing to do the whole month of August, and, just trying to figure out what to do. And I made sure to go to a bunch of jam sessions, which helped. I made sure to kind of be seen and, introduce myself to people. And that's the sort of thing that, if you want to go for the angle of make your own luck, that's kind of where I kind of went to. And even, also with that sort of thing, the social media thing was something I started around that time, about 5-6 years ago now. And that was kind of a way of putting myself in front of people, even if I couldn't physically do so. So that kind of helps me. I know that's not exactly what you're talking about with that, but, somewhat on.
No, but this is a really good direction to take it.
Yeah.
And we can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think the idea of getting gigs is such an elusive thing, and, I don't pretend to have all of the answers, because sometimes it is just random. Sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time, and it is just luck. But
right.
Go ahead.
I think there's a way to I feel a point emerging here that I think I can articulate well, and that is if we kind of move away from the semantic term of luck and maybe start talking about it as probability.
There you go.
It might be more
that is a much
beneficial
more
to you.
Scholarly term that definitely helps us here.
No, it's practical. Why
Right.
would you ever rely on luck? I mean, of course, like I could look back at memories of getting work and just be like, well, that was incredibly lucky. And sometimes it is.
Right.
But the environments that I put myself in and the preparation that I did as a player was intentional to increase the statistical probability of my success. And so you could say, like, the other opposite extreme of that is, which I've heard before, is I don't know where to get gigs, but I know where you can't, and that's on your couch in your pajamas. I mean, this year, of course, that's moot point because I mean, all of our work is on our couch in our pajamas. So this year you reasonably absolutely can. But in the before times, or like if you're talking about being actively in a scene where live music is happening, you got to think about not only where can I go to meet people, but where are the musicians that are doing what I want to do, spending their time.
Right.
And
And,
so that could be you keep going. Tyler,
yeah,
you got
yeah.
something.
I mean, that's definitely how I kind of addressed it, of just trying to find, where, when I moved to Chicago, it's like, where do the jazz trombone players live? Where are they, where do they gather? And I was just kind of fortunate that a lot of the jam sessions that I happened to be able to find on the internet, there happened to be a lot of jazz trombone players who I think really just at that time, it's just like I hit it at the right time where they weren't doing as much, so they wanted to go to those jam sessions, and I met a lot of people that way. Yeah,
I will say, just in Chicago, there's definitely a very healthy culture of trombone players that are like 100% down to play tunes. So
right.
like that is a symptom of a larger culture, and I'm sure like there's pockets of that in other large metropolitan areas. But I will say, like, Chicago trombone players like are just like down. They're down for hanging. It's great. It's just such a
Yeah.
good city for trombone.
And I think that the big thing too is just like you gotta put yourself out there, too. And I know that like a lot of the questions that I get of how to get gigs are coming from, often probably people who are in high school, that sort of age. And I'm not going to tell you that it'll be easy to get gigs while you're in high school. I mean, I was fortunate to play some gigs while I was in high school, but I definitely wasn't, a gigging musician in high school. I mean, you practically can't be. But, I still was doing all of those things. I went to jam sessions, and, I tried to be seen and be around the adults and see, not hopefully not to an annoying level, but, just be around. So let's see. We got a question from Mr. Anonymous I'll throw up here. Have you ever stopped practicing for a week and you come back and you sound better, or is it just me? So I would say that is not just you, and that is actually a pretty common thing. And what I always kind of, chalk that up to is that it's often like, you're an athlete or something, and we do the same things every single day. You're wearing out these muscles, you're doing all of these things over and over and over again, and there's no kind of rest period. And then you take a week off and you have like maximum rest period, and then you sound much better. So I think that is a pretty common thing. It's not necessarily how I would choose to go about things, is always, trying to take a week off, just because a week, generally speaking, is it's a little bit long, and it's probably, you might sound better right at first, but almost certainly, you'll have things like endurance going down and things like that. Connor, do you have any experience with that?
I was going to say the big thing that messes with me, if I take a week off plus, of course I sound great right on the horn, but then my endurance is always the first thing to go. But I will say there's definitely something about the physical repair. Also, I think it's helpful to take those breaks to kind of let your body sort of catch up with whatever the sound is in your head.
Yeah.
Sometimes I noticed, like, if I wasn't seeing a whole lot of development, of course, this would be relying on luck. This is not something that you can plan for. But if you take a break at the right time, when maybe you've been over practicing or you've been practicing something for a long time, that time away from the horn might open up your ears a little bit, or just the fact of being away from your sound, and then you come back to it and you hear yourself again. You might pick up on more of the progress that you have been making and think, oh, I'm a little bit farther along in what I want. So there you go.
Yeah, so I think that it is a really, it is a common thing. I guess the thing that I would say is I'd caution you to get too enamored with that idea and fall in love with the idea of, well, if I want to sound good, I'll take a week off. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily the right way to go about it. But I do think it's healthy to take some time off. I tend not, you know, I tend not to take too much time off. I do take some time off, but I don't know the last time I've taken a full week off. I guess the last time that I was really sick, I took a week off. But for the most part, if I'm healthy, taking a week off is really, really rare for me, mostly because my schedule doesn't really allow for it. That's a big part of it. I'm definitely not the one to say no to a gig so that I can preserve a week off or something.
Right.
But, maybe that isn't the healthiest way to do it. So, but I know tons of people who take at least a week off every year, and do it kind of, religiously, and it tends to help them.
A lot of classical orchestra musicians, from what I understand, like when there's a break in the season, they'll have some time partitioned off to kind of, whether that's physically for their chops or whether that's for a headspace thing. If they do it, then, I don't know any better, but hey.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who take the whole summers off. That's not a horribly uncommon thing to do. It's
hardcore.
Again, not necessarily my MO, but it's a choice. And I know some people. One of the former professors at the University of North Texas for trombone, Vern Kagreis, would kind of say that his way of thinking about it is all of his practicing is putting money in the bank, and he's withdrawing from it, but he's put so much money or so many practice hours in the bank that he's kind of okay. He doesn't need to really do all that much.
Right.
So that's another kind of strategy, another way of doing things. When I do take time off, I kind of think about, I can tell, but maybe not everyone around me can tell, depending on what I'm doing. Not every gig do I need to have, my highest note ready at all times, but a lot of times I need a little bit of something. So
highest note?
Yeah, well.
Keep it written down?
Yeah, on a very small piece of paper in my wallet. It's only
in your wallet.
Yeah, it's only for my
in a gold locket.
Or it's in a note on my phone.
Yeah, I still got it.
Right.
It's funny.
But I think this might be a good place to kind of wrap things up if we can all hear my dog in the background, who's not thrilled with me live streaming at this point in time. So I think
fussy.
Yeah, little fussy, which is fair. I have been neglecting her for the last hour, and my partner is studying right now, so and not here. But anyway, I think that's a good place to kind of call it, and we will get back to things next week. And just kind of a reminder of a couple things: that Discord link is on here somewhere if you want to do that, and the shirts are live. They're here. So shirts have reached critical mass. Connor's got his shirt, and I think most of my stuff that's coming is a little bit later, but sent Connor a water bottle. Hopefully he'll get that soon. And I got a coffee mug, an accessories pouch, got a shirt for me, a shirt for my wife, and I got is there one more thing? Oh, I also got a cell phone case. So that link is there, and if you want to buy something from there, it does help out this channel. So it's definitely much appreciated, and you can use discount code LOWBRASSU, all one word, for at least right now. I have it set up where that'll go away at the end of the month. So we'll let this crying dog get her way. But thanks everyone for watching the stream, and we will see you next week. All right, bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right. I don't think we have